if you were playing a board game, any board game, you've got a set of rules that you follow. And if these rules are broken, then basically you've broken the rules of the game, and that's it. You're out, or you're disqualified, or whatever. Now, you don't, generally, people don't break the rules of the game. They just play the game by the rules, and that's it. And we play it on through. Now, the trouble is, when the rules are made by some game manufacturer who decides what's fair for the, I don't know, say 6 players that are going to play it, and what makes everything even, with an element, obviously there's got to be an element of luck, otherwise people wouldn't play if it was just, you know, if there wasn't an ability to win back anything. So there's an element of rolling dice and, you know, luck of the draw of the cards and things like that. It's like a gamble in a way. The trouble is that if you then had one player in that 6 on that board game that could change the rules whenever they like, and once they've said those rules have changed and this is now the new rules, then you wouldn't really ever be able to win that against that person, because as soon as you started to win, they would either, if it was a financial game, they would levy a new tax, targeting your property or whatever it may be, where you're making gains on them. It could be that they set new rules to restrict your ability to maybe purchase things that you wanted to purchase. I think you're sort of understanding where I'm going with this. We live in a world where we're governed by people who make laws for people who own the game. And every time that you try to pop up wherever you may go, I use it as an example in this country. I'm trying not to name any politicians, I hate politics. But when a certain person was in power, and 9/11 happened, after that it was like crazy. House prices went rocketed, and then people started buying houses and literally making money on them overnight. And I'm not talking small money either. Then it was buy to let, and they could buy like 5 or 6 houses and, you know, work their way up the ladder. The trouble is that as soon as that was sort of seen as a way to better and advance their lives and gain against a world where it just wants you to be down, and some people are up, some people are down, and it wants to keep you down. All that the rule maker has to do is bring in new rules on owning property, new taxes, new ways to stop you from being able to bounce out of and be creative and play by these rules to better your life for yourself. Take this on a little bit further, and if you look back years on this channel, years ago, I can't remember what the title of the video is now, but basically I was talking about you're the free person that you know, I do talk about on there that people always go on about, this document here gives me freedom, and that could be whatever it is. In the UK, for instance, it would be, I don't know, the Magna Carta was doing its rounds a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, and people were sort of saying this piece of document, you know, it says you're not allowed to treat us like this, you're not allowed to do that. Now, I would have the opposite opinion of that it was an enslavement document, and I pointed out at the time that by what basically happened was, at that time in humanity, someone wrote a piece of paper, and everybody agreed that piece of paper gave them freedom. As soon as you agree that piece of paper gives you freedom, you then belong to that piece of paper, and whoever wants to manipulate it, change it, or it just gets dismissed over the years because it becomes maybe irrelevant for modern life, whatever. And we're in the sort of the same boat now. There's endless with our language, and I will go into this in another video. We need to change our language. We need to change the way we refer to things. We need to stay one step ahead and create our own little world, as in our group, because the trouble is the game's rigged, and you can't win because every time you want to get somewhere, the laws are changed. And the laws are changed by the very people who want to keep you down where you are, and therefore it always filters back to the top at some form or other as soon as anything becomes big. And of course the masses welcome it, because people who are really poor, and some people have made it sort of, you know, like we've got at the moment, a good middle class, or we did have a good middle class, and especially an upper middle class, started looking really, really healthy at one time. And people were starting to share the money down, and employment was good and everything else. And the trouble is that was getting too close to the people who make the rules. So they just make new rules, and ultimately who suffers but the really poor first, because the middle class and the upper middle class would pass any of those costs or taxes down the system to the poor. And you know, it's always the poor that die and sort of sacrifice themselves for this bigger gain. So I'm not a great fan of rules and laws, and I'm not saying that I'm unlawful, because I'm not. What I'm saying is that I try not to buy into the fact that all these bits of paper that get written every day and added to, which I referred to on another one of my videos about the European Union, and how it just writes like pallet loads of paper a day to tell you what you can and can't do. And in the end it becomes so knitted that anybody can literally pick a piece of paper out from anywhere and say that you can't do something. Even if you think you can on this piece of paper, they'll pull another piece out and use that instead, and say, well, this piece of paper here says that you can't do it. And it's just a way of controlling that freedom and that flow. So yeah, and it's rigged, and the best way is not to play. At the moment, we're in a situation where, in order to try and gain some big ground in one go, these players at the top have literally chucked the board up in the air. They've thrown it up in the air and said, right, what are you going to do now? And it's up to us to make our own rules, become self-sufficient, deal with each other, and they will make more laws and rules. Well, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you can't share seeds, and you can't plant vegetable gardens and swap your work for someone else's because we need to have a cut. All these things they'll bring in, you need to just go on and do your own thing, because there will always be those new rules that are changed, and it will always be rigged against you, because they are the rule makers, and if you follow those rules you will never ever escape. And that was the reason for you know, my video saying that these documents that you buy into that say that they give you freedom on a piece of paper are just enslavement documents. And you can say, oh, they're written by some person this, some person that. All the people who write these rules and try and take over, they'd love to rule you too. All these revolutionaries, they're only after power. Don't you see that? The people who aren't after power are the ones who just want to get on with their lives. All the rest of them are just after power. And they, in a heartbeat, if they were given the opportunity, they would rule over you too. So the best thing you could possibly do is to not play the game.